Julie Taymor has been performing since she was a little girl, staging theater in her family's backyard. Today, she is regarded as one of the visionaries in theater and design. She's best known as the master of magical realism who brought Disney's Lion King to Broadway in 1997. The musical was hailed a landmark event in American entertainment by Newsweek magazine. It went on to win 6 Tony Awards, including Best Musical and Best Director. She is now marking her feature film debut as a director with Titus. It is her screen adaptation of the Shakespearean play she first staged in 1994. Here is a trailer from the film.
Titus.
Welcome, my gracious lord.
Welcome home.
I am pleased to have Julie Taymor back at this table. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I've said this to you 1,000 times. Congratulations on all that Lion King came to be and represents and continues to be, and how many people are thrilled, and especially how many young people are thrilled to go and celebrate.
Definitely.
You know, everybody who knows you and respects you and loves you has this question. What do you think the question is?
Why Titus?
Yes.
You mean why the Lion King to
Here
Titus?
you come off of Lion King.
Right.
You are the toast of Broadway. You are the queen of Disney. And they're saying, make a film.
Yes.
You choose Titus.
He's the greatest writer in the Western Hemisphere.
Of course, but some will say it's not his best play, and others will say you can go 2 ways with it. You can sort of play with it and sort of look at it askance, or you can treat it as an epic, and you chose the harder way.
I chose what I think is the real way because I respect the play tremendously. I think that it's an epic piece. It's full of extraordinary tragedy, but also great humor. And I think what is so exciting, when you ask me this question, what is exciting is to bring an unknown Shakespeare to a wide audience. How many Hamlets do we need? I mean, how many of the Richard III?
You can never get too many Hamlets,
no,
and you can never get too many
But you know what's thrilling is to take an early Shakespeare that has all of the precursors for the later plays. You see Othello, you see Iago, you see Richard III, you see King Lear in this, you see Lady Macbeth. And I think that this thing about whether it's been a good play or a bad play, is it one of his best plays, it has an energy that only a young writer has. It has a ballsiness, it's got daring. And he spews it out in this play in a way that makes it a great movie. See, not all Shakespeare, although we were talking about this, that Shakespeare would have written screenplays today, or he would have made movies.
I said to you beforehand, someone said to me that if Shakespeare was alive today, he'd be making movies.
That's right, he writes movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote plays for a naked stage. And being a theater practitioner, we know that as a theater artist, you have to rely on the imagination of the audience to fill in the blanks in the theater. In film, it's a literal medium. So you have to, if you're going to go to a snowfields, you better go to a snowfields. If you're going to do the Lion King, you have to be on a savannah. You can't ask the audience to use their imagination to say, you know, we know this is theater. What were we going to say?
No, I want to get to that in a minute. I mean, I want to get to more of that. But just here you come off of Lion King, okay? And we talked at the time about what you were going to do, and you said, I'm going to make Titus. And I said, really? Did you first want to do something Shakespearean? I mean, did you want to put the bar as high up as you could get it?
Yes. Yes, I love Shakespeare.
Now, if I'm sitting there and I'm an executive of a movie house, the first thing I'm going to say to you is, Julie, this is not going to be a huge commercial success. Are you prepared to accept that?
Well, you know, we didn't, it's not what do you call it? It's an independent film.
Right.
We did it independently. There was no studio that wanted to back this movie.
For the obvious reason.
Obviously, but on the other hand, we'll see.
Same thing would be true if you said you're going to make a film adaptation of Othello.
Absolutely.
They're not going to. They're going to say, really? It's not going to be a big commercial success. And you, who have such a creative imagination and a sense of story and could do all that stuff with animation, wow.
I know, but I do what I'm passionate about, period.
All right, why are you passionate about this?
I'm passionate about this because I think it's a great play. One of the greatest Shakespeare plays. Now,
One of the greatest Shakespearean plays. Do you know how many people believe that with you?
A lot. You'll be surprised. A lot. I mean, there are some of the naysayers come from centuries, from past centuries. And I do think in the 18th century, in the 19th century, the white glove century, where theater was actually split from the masses. Right. You know, in Shakespeare's day, the groundlings and the upper classes went to the same show. And he wrote for all classes. So you've got the good entertainment, you've got the vengeance story, you've got great roles for actors here. It's a roller coaster ride, and on the other hand, it's got great poetry. Now, again, I think you can wade through some of his plays, and you can use a red pencil, and I did. I cut at least an hour to an hour and a half out of this play. And there are places that are overwritten, or there are places that might be ridiculous, but his plays were not meant to be read. They were meant to be performed. And he didn't have a publisher there going, you know, let's edit a little here. He had the actors or the directors, or if there weren't directors at that time, the actors were the directors. They picked and they chose what they wanted to put out there on the stage. Now, in the latter part of this century, there have been a greatly heralded productions of Titus, beginning with the Olivier one that Peter Brook directed in '55. Oddly enough, in that period, Brook excised, he got rid of a lot of the humor, what we would call black humor today, because it seemed in bad taste. Now, that's what seems normal taste here at the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the next century. It feels like a play written for today. That's why I did it. That's why I did it as a film. I said this reeks of now.
Why does it... Oh, before I say that, what's Titus about?
Well, very simply, if I can do this, it's about what makes people violent, what gets them on the path of the cycle of violence. It's about vengeance. And it's not about how lowlifes who are born in bad situations murder and rape and do these things. It's about how great people or normal people, how it could be your sister, your brother, your father, your uncle, could try very hard to hold on to their values, and somehow via mistake here or there or cultural differences, they get on a path and they end up becoming a violent person. And then it's about the aftermath of violence. And then it's also about violence as entertainment, which I find to be an extraordinary tension between a story about violence and how we enjoy, as a people, we enjoy watching violent stories or seeing paintings about the darkest recesses of the human mind. No, it did not. What do you mean it didn't begin with us?
It's not a contemporary phenomenon.
No, it's not. I mean, look at the crucifixion.
Sure.
Great art all over the place, in churches, above beds. The crucifixion is there to talk to you on a spiritual level, but it has inspired artists. All tragedy has inspired great art, whether it's Verdi's Requiem or a Shakespearean play.
Okay, but we've got characters in here. We're going to see segments from a movie. What's the story here?
The story is, okay, Titus is, Anthony Hopkins plays the great General Titus Andronicus, who is coming back from 20 years of war with the Goths. And he comes back triumphant. He brings his enemies, the queen of the Goths, Tamara, Jessica Lange, right. And in a ritual where he is burying his own dead sons, in order to appease the spirits of his dead sons, he sacrifices the firstborn son of the enemy queen. Now, everything Titus does, he does out of tradition, ritual. He's a very rigid, old-fashioned kind of guy. Good man, very good man. But he makes this one act, even though she begs him to not kill her son. She says, beautiful line, "Sweet mercy is nobility's true badge. Titus, my sons are like your sons. They fought in the war." But he says, "I'm sorry, lady. This is the way my religion, this is what I have to do.
I have no choice.
I have no choice." That sets off this cycle where she vows vengeance. "I'll find a day to massacre them all," says Tamara. Now, here you see...
I like this already.
Yeah, but what is so great is you see, and this is why Jessica Lange took the part, in the very first scene in the mausoleum, she begs as a mother. And she tries to get this guy to respond to her as a human being, but his culture and her culture, it's tribal. They're different. So she then becomes the queen. She's the queen of the Goths. He picks the wrong emperor. It's a complicated story, but anyway, he makes one mistake after another, and lo and behold, this woman, who has now become the Empress of Rome, she marries the Alan Cumming part, right. Saturninus, right. The Mad Emperor, and she ends up systematically destroying Titus's family. And by the end, he tries so hard to hold on to the sense of justice. It's a very absurd, it's almost like theater of the absurd, where he sends arrows to the gods, looking for justice. He can't find it on earth, so he looks in heaven and hell for justice. And when he can't find justice, he vows revenge. And this good man who could be our generals, he could be a Schwarzkopf, he could be a Colin Powell, come back, we want him to be the president, he's too tired, he doesn't like politics, gets himself into trouble, and here he is by the end, he becomes an incredible monster, but we're rooting for him. We're rooting for him as he destroys her children, and I don't want to give it all away.
I want to see it's a series of clips here. First off, you mentioned Alan Cummings, who plays Andronicus.
Yes.
And has chosen Tamara, played by Jessica Lange, as his queen. Roll tape.
And let not discontent daunt all your hopes. Madam, he that comforts you can make you greater than Queen of Gods.
As you were watching this, you said it's also about madness.
Yes.
And it's also about race.
Yes.
Hopkins, your first and only choice for this?
He's my first choice. Absolutely. I think it's for me, this is not a modest thing to say, but I think it's the greatest thing he's ever done. I think it takes all the wonderful performances from Remains of the Day, you know, the repressed, controlled, tight Anthony Hopkins. It's this seething madness underneath, but the way that he can just pull it all in and then explode, it's just fantastic. The journey he takes as a character, the development of this character is immense. And he went through the ringer doing it, too.
What does that mean?
First of all, we shot in Rome.
Mad on the set?
No, he didn't go mad on the set. He took on the character of Titus seriously. And I would say, and he would say, he bared his soul on this one. He ripped himself open and apart. And I was watching it happen day by day as we were shooting.
Why was that, though? Because, I mean, was that all all for the sake of the part, or was it just the whole shooting of this thing was so...
It was difficult.
Difficult.
It was difficult. I think it's a combination of both.
The difficulty of the shooting made him...
Go wacko? No.
Well, what?
No.
Your words.
No,
what?
I think what happened is...
Go become Titus.
Become to a degree. I mean, he's still an actor and he's still a professional. He still comes on time and he does his part. So it's not like he went mad in that sense, but all of the actors and everybody who worked on Titus did it for the love of the piece, for the passion of it. They weren't making lots of money, so they did it because they believed in it. Hopkins was attracted to the darkness of this piece. Somehow it touched him very much.
This is Hannibal Lecter we're talking about.
That's right. This is Hannibal Lecter crossed with King Lear. I mean,
that's what it is? Yes.
Well, you got some, I think it's more than Hannibal Lecter. I think makes that look a little tame. But I think, you know, having to live through this character, and we did a 3-week rehearsal period where people got to really follow, they got to do it in order so that they could understand the peaks, the highs and lows, and really test things out and take risks. He became this part to a degree, and I think in the way that you'd want him. It was so electric and exciting and difficult. And we were also in Italy and Croatia, all Italian crew, so you get the talking going on the whole time. It was winter, we had weather problems. I mean, it was a real first film. I can't say nightmare
real
because we
first
always...
film what?
I was going to say nightmare, but it was to a degree, and on the other hand, we all knew what we had every day. You go to dailies and you go, this is incredibly exciting. So you deal with it.
Do you regret you didn't make movies before?
Well, I made a short film.
But this is a big movie.
No, I don't regret it.
You don't?
Oh, no.
You don't wish that you made one 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
But it doesn't work that way. You know, all of my experience in the theater has prepared me to do a film like this. This is a first feature film. I don't think this is the easiest thing to do.
It certainly doesn't work that way for you, because you're a woman who went and stopped off for 30 days in Indonesia and remained for 4 years.
That's right.
So
that's
we
right.
just, you know, if ever I've met someone who lets things happen, you're it.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Roll tape. Here is another scene between Alan Cummings and Jessica Lange.
Come, sweet Emperor. Come, Andronicus. Take up this good old man and cheer the heart that dies in tempest of thy angry frown.
Violence here. Tell me how you approached that. What was your sense of that? And because it's central, as you said.
Well, first of all, I take my cues from Shakespeare. If it's on screen, it's because he wrote it to be on screen or on stage in his day. If it's not, it's not. So when you hear people saying there's rape, dismemberment, decapitation, you don't see any of that. You don't see any of it. You don't see the hands literally getting cut off. You feel it psychologically. It has happened off stage, off screen. You see the aftermath. I play with violence in both a realistic way because it's a movie, and a movie has to be, you have to believe in the world. But I also stylize it to a degree. So you have images, for instance, when Lavinia has been ravaged, she's left in a swamp, and she's left on a stump in a swamp, and instead of seeing her hands that are cut off, she has twigs that are coming out of what would be her stumps. Right. And this is inspired by the language. Shakespeare talks about her branches that have been lopped and hewed. And he uses nature and animal imagery, and I put that into the film in various places. Titus says Rome is a wilderness of tigers, and tigers must prey. And not maybe at that moment would you see a tiger, but later on when we see a flashback of the rape of Lavinia, again, it's not literal. You see boys who become tigers. You see a woman who is half doe, half woman. And I play with his imagery, which is inspired by the Greek myths, and give you another version of violence, a surreal, nightmarish version. I call them penny arcade nightmares. And they come up to try and visualize what is the actually invisible, the unvisualizable. I don't know if that's a word, or I just made it up. But these are much more haunting images that try to put together our idea of violence.
Roll tape. This is Anthony Hopkins when he realizes he's been, that by having supported the election, his world will crumble.
Let my tears staunch the earth's dry appetite. My son's sweet blood will make it shave and blush. Ah!
A couple of things about this. One is that the opening scene could be contemporary.
That's right.
You know, it could have been Croatia, could have been anywhere.
That's right.
Boy,
That's right.
toy soldiers. What's that about?
Well, I wanted to
It's not
set up.
from Shakespeare.
No, it's not from Shakespeare. The character of the young boy, he is young Lucius. He becomes the grandson of Titus. I wanted to use this character as our eyes. It's through his eyes that we fall into this dark story. So I begin, in the screenplay that I adapted, it says this could be Sarajevo or Brooklyn. And he's at a kitchen table with toy soldiers, Goths, Romans, G.I. Joes, Star Wars, futuristic. And he's got a paper bag over his head. And he's playing with his toys as we listen to Popeye, the Three Stooges, Kung Fu. Innocent TV violence. He's an innocent. He's, I wouldn't say ignorant, but he's innocent. And as he plays with this, he almost conjures up this war that surrounds him. The walls of his kitchen start to shake until, literally, this is a prologue, it explodes. And the clown, which is a Shakespearean clown, it's more like a supernatural intervention, takes this child, saves him from the fire, runs down the stairs, and bursts through the door, and we're in the Roman Colosseum. And the child picks up a charred soldier, Roman soldier, and as he looks down at the other end of the Colosseum, the armies start to enter. And it's almost like an Alice in Wonderland time warp. The child now has fallen into the past, and you see these soldiers covered in clay, motorcycles, chariots, tanks, Hopkins covered in clay, coming back, and I had the image of those Chinese terracotta soldiers. Yeah. And I've set up the concept so that you can blend time. A child doesn't know the difference between one historic period or another. So now I'm able to blend time, and the collision of time and the melding of time in this piece is fairly unusual. We take ancient Rome, more the 1930s and 40s of the Mussolini era. We use his buildings, the government building, and we use the present. And instead of updating Shakespeare, which I find to be ridiculous mostly, usually, because everything then becomes anachronistic if you update it. Shakespeare himself combined time. He took Greek mythology, Greek tragedies, Ovid's Metamorphosis. He takes what he knew of the Roman history, early Roman history, and his own Elizabethan time, and blends it. So you have archaic religions, Christianity blended and mixed. I've done the same thing in the style of, hopefully, Shakespeare. And here, there's nothing anachronistic anymore because we've created our own world. It's a very difficult world to make specific. But with Dante Ferretti and Milena Canonero, my designers, and Elliot Goldenthal, who did the same thing in music, we were able to create a world that you have to fall into and believe. And the child is those eyes. We go through him. And we follow his arc so that he goes from innocence to being an active participant in the drama. Finally, he says something. He actually starts to talk halfway through. And he becomes the child who's learning about his family and about the blood feuds and the tribal wars. But by the end, it's almost a rite of passage, as this child has to make a decision and decide how he's going to go on with his life. Is the cycle of vengeance going to continue, or is it not? And the last image deals with that.
All right, I want to play, and that's an image of hope.
Absolutely. Major hope. I mean, if you ask about the Lion King, which is about the circle of life, right? Mm-hmm. I would say there is a circle in Titus. It's the circle of the Colosseum, which is the theater of vengeance, the circle, the arena of cruelty. The archetypal theater of cruelty is the Colosseum. And our bookends are the Colosseum. And that child takes his enemy, the baby, the one who would grow up to kill him if the blood feud goes on, and he exits out of that Colosseum towards what's a bleak landscape, but hopefully towards a different world, the next millennium, whatever you want to call it.
This is a little bit of directing here. Take a look at this sort of stylized, surreal images as reflected here. Take a look.
I am revenge, sent from the infernal kingdom, accompanied by rape and murder here.
Finally, there is this. Some people look at this and there are comparisons, if that's the right word. They're references to Fellini. Are you influenced by Fellini?
I love Fellini. Not all Fellini, but I have loved Fellini. I think that, what would the references be? It's actually not a Fellini kind of movie. He would have never made this. It's so language-oriented. Not the last few things, but that constitutes about a minute altogether. I think the fact that we shot in Rome, that it's ancient Rome, and that we're in that environment that is such a Fellini world, that of course you're going to see certain moments. But the sensibility of Fellini and my sensibility, I wouldn't say they're absolutely at opposite ends. Not just this movie, but my work.
When you set out to make this finally, I mean, what did you need? What did you think? Did you simply say, look, I've had all the experience I need to make this film. This is a play that I have staged. This is a work that I am passionate about. I mean, and I have been able to get the actors that I believe are right. I've got everything I need. Or did you say, boy, I'm going to go on my own to reach out and try to learn, understand, do whatever other preparation to make the film?
Well, I think that I was able to attract excellent people. Luciano Tovoli, my director of photography, Francoise Bonneau, all of my team were the best. And so you've got this support team. Jodie Patton, Paul Allen's sister, you know, who runs Clear Blue Sky, believed in the piece. Ellen Little and Robbie Little, who originally optioned this work. These people believed in the text. They liked it. They knew, who knows if it's going to be a commercial success. I mean, it's such a god-awful shame that all we do is look at box office numbers as opposed to, is this movie meaningful? Does it move us? Will it last? I mean, you know, you can also talk about the fact that this movie now enters the Shakespearean canon. So probably over the long longevity of time, over time, it probably will make its money and have a tremendous success that way over a long period of time. What I needed was enough money to do my vision, and that was always a difficult struggle. Always. It always is. I don't think it matters at what level you're working on. It's hard. But I had the background in filmmaking. I knew what I wanted to say. I have to say honestly, if I hadn't directed it on the stage, I wouldn't have dared to do it on film. I knew this piece. I gave my actors the time to rehearse so that they could make the language, and many people have commented on the fact that the language is very accessible, very easy to understand, and still poetic. That's very important to me. The language of Shakespeare is the reason I did it.
Having done it, what do you want to do now?
Well, I have a show opening April 18th.
On Broadway.
On Broadway, a pure comedy. I like to go from one extreme to another. So this is The Green Bird, and Elliot and I are working on it now, finishing the casting. And that's based on a commedia dell'arte. It's a kind of foolish love story. It's a love story with philosophical intentions, but a lot of bawdy humor. And then I'm working on 2 films. One is an updating of The Flying Dutchman, which will not be the opera, though I've directed the opera. It will be taking the myth and playing with time, with the 15th century and the 20th century, and ideas of romantic love. 19th century romantic love and 21st century.
Finally, there's this book, Julie Taymor, Playing with Fire, updated and expanded edition, which includes some whole range of things, from The Tempest to Taming of the Shrew, to Titus Andronicus,
the play,
and the play, and there is even the movie. There's The Flying Dutchman, which you were talking about.
And I did Salome in Russia for the Kirov opera. That's in there. The operas. I think we might be doing Oedipus Rex at the Met for the Lincoln Center Festival this summer. Right. There are talks about that.
Now, I heard you were asked to do something phenomenal. Were you asked to design something for the millennium or something important for the Olympics?
Yes, I did. I was.
But you said no.
No, it's too many people to answer to.
What did they want you to do?
I think this was
to stage the opening ceremony.
Yes, for the Winter Olympics that are coming up. I mean, there are all kinds of fun
and
offers
you said no
like
to that. But to what? You're too busy, or it's just
no? You're going to work towards. Yes, too many people to. How do you get to? If I could have what the Disney guys gave me, which was really a lot of freedom to do my vision, and if the Olympic Committee could say, do what you want to do, I would do it. But there's not going to be that kind of freedom, and I know that. And
so you said pass.
I have a lot of other things that would be more fun to do, and maybe aren't just for one night.
Billions would see it. Remember that. Billions.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I have to. It's a lot of time to spend for one moment. It's a lot of time. You know, and it really is about whether I could do something that I think would be artistically valid and not just an entertainment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank
Julie
you.
Taymor, Titus, thank you for joining us. See you next time.